So I'm making this video to explain how DoorDash Peak Pay, if you're a California driver, is most likely a scam for you. So if you're a DoorDash driver or Uber Eats driver, whatever, in California, you probably are aware of Prop 22. And if you're not aware of Prop 22, you need to be aware of Prop 22 if you want to maximize the money that you are making. Regardless of whether or not you know what Prop 22 is, I'm going to explain how it works. Basically, 4 years ago, they passed the law, Prop 22, and the law states that the gig apps like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Amazon Flex, Grubhub, and so on, they all have to pay us a minimum base pay for active time. So, first of all, active time, the way active time is calculated is active time starts when you click accept delivery and it ends when you click complete delivery. That time in between is called active time. So, during that time, they have to pay you 120% of minimum wage. So that's minimum wage times 1.2. So in my city, the minimum wage is $17.25. And this depends on your city. In California, it does vary city to city. My city, the minimum wage is $17.25. So if we multiply that by 1.2, as you can see on the screen, that gives us $20.70 per hour of active time. In addition to the $20.70 per hour, we also receive 35 cents per mile for every mile that you drive after you click accept and before you click complete. And then tips go on top. So if you get a large tip, it doesn't take away from your Prop 22 minimum earning guarantee. You're still going to get the same amount. So here's where some drivers know this and some drivers really don't know how this works. If you're a delivery driver, this may be different for rideshare drivers, because sometimes the base pay for rideshare drivers can be higher. But if you're a delivery driver, the probability that your base pay that you are actually getting from DoorDash is going to be higher than the minimum earning guarantee is basically zero. Pretty much every single trip that you take as a DoorDash driver, Uber Eats driver, particularly Uber Eats, because they really will undercut you in pay. Every single trip that you take, they are paying you significantly less than what they have to pay based on the minimum earning guarantee. Now, if you've been doing DoorDash for even more than a week, you know that at the end of the week, they are giving you an adjustment. So the adjustment takes into account all of the active time that you've accumulated during the week, all of the miles, and then they compare it to how much they've already paid you in base pay, and then they pay you the difference. Now, here's the thing where um the peak pay can be what I'm calling kind of a scam. So sometimes in your city, what you're going to see is that DoorDash will say, "Oh, if you go to this zone, we will offer you $1.50 peak pay, or $2. I've the highest I've seen I think is 2.50 or $3. It goes higher in other states, but I'm really only talking about California because this whole video doesn't even apply in any way, shape, or form to any state except for California. Um, so they will tell you that if you go to XYZ zone, that they will pay you peak pay of, let's say, $1.50 or whatever. Now, um, in theory, that could be beneficial to go to that zone because if they're willing to offer peak pay, that means that they're saying that this zone has a lot of orders potentially. But if you've been doing DoorDash for really any period of time, you excuse me, you know that even if the map is like super red and it says very busy, that doesn't really mean anything. I've had times where I've signed on where it says very busy, and I think I've had times where like the estimated wait time was 12 to 22 minutes. So to me, the very busy thing is just to try to get drivers online. Maybe they're anticipating orders coming up or they just want to have drivers available. But I mean, that's not really in your best interest because if you're signing on to DoorDash, you're trying to actually get some orders. So in theory, there is some benefit to the peak pay if you're looking at it in terms of strategizing, like, okay, if they're willing to offer peak pay in this zone, then there might be a lot of orders. But at the same time, that may not be true. And that's why I'm going to explain how they're actually just doing that to get you over there to do those deliveries. But the peak pay, you're not going to see any of that money. So when you do a delivery, like I said, most of the time you're being underpaid on the base pay. So I put like some mock deliveries. I actually took some deliveries that I've personally done, and then I did some calculations to get the average amount of time that I spend on a delivery. And I'll show you on the computer. You're gonna have to be on the video. If you're just listening in the car, you're not gonna be able to see what I'm talking about. Um, and if you're a driver that really understands Prop 22 really well, you don't really need to watch this at all. Uh, hopefully you haven't wasted your time already watching this, but these are going to be sample deliveries that I'm going to uncover here. So delivery number one, and these are actually actual deliveries that I've done. The time is not necessarily perfectly accurate because DoorDash doesn't tell you how much time you spent on a specific delivery, but um, I did some pretty good calculations to be able to match the amount of time to that delivery so that you kind of see how things work and they're very realistic numbers. So let's say you sign on and you do this is the very beginning of the week. You haven't done any deliveries yet. Delivery number one, you are receiving a base pay of $3. In my zone, that's just a delivery that's going like right down the street. That I know across the nation the base pay is $2, but in my city in my zone the base pay is $3, and they get away with it because they know they're gonna have to pay you Prop 22 anyways. So you do a delivery and you get paid $3. Now, very reasonable that this delivery would take you at least 11 minutes. It's probably going to take you longer. There's not a lot of deliveries that you complete in 11 minutes. If you've been doing this for any period of time, you know that there's very few deliveries that you complete in 11 minutes. If it's just picking up, dropping off like right across the street or right down the street, you get them. I've done deliveries in fucking like 4 minutes, 6 minutes. No, maybe not 4 minutes, but I've done something like 6, 7 minutes. So it's possible, but chances are 11 minutes is probably about as low as it's going to go for a delivery. So let's say the delivery is 11 minutes and I have 5 miles. So actually, that's probably not realistic. Let's say you went 3 miles. So you just picked it up really quick, dropped it off really quick. There wasn't a lot of traffic. Boom. Okay. So DoorDash paid you $3. You drove 3 miles. Now here's the thing. Uh, based on the calculations, so if you can kind of see in my in the formula here, I have it all calculated out so that this is giving us exactly how much they would have to pay us in Prop 22 pay for that same delivery. They would have to pay us $4.89. It's pretty simple to do the math. Well, it's relatively simple. If you take the Prop 22 hourly pay, $20.70, divide that by 60 because there's 60 minutes in an hour, that gives you 34.5 cents per minute. So then you go times 11 minutes. That gives us $3.79. I'll get another calculator. Plus 3 miles times 0.35. That's 35 cents. Take this and you add it up. $4.84. The spreadsheet does it actually more accurately than because it actually includes the seconds too. So the spreadsheet has it a little bit more accurate. You're getting the extra 5 cents for those 8 minutes. So that's the formula. So the Prop 22 pay for that delivery is supposed to be $4.82. So we have a difference of $1.89. This was your first trip of the week. So we're going to be stacking it up delivery after delivery. If you do I usually do like 70 deliveries in a week. You're going to see how this starts to move. Okay. So we have a difference of $1.89. We've only done one delivery, so that's a total of $1.89 difference. We're going to move to the next delivery. So you move on to your second delivery. Your second delivery has a base pay of $4.50. So it's probably a little bit more distance on that one. We're looking at 16 minutes and 42 seconds it took you to complete this. Pretty reasonable. Now we're going to say you drove 5 miles. Okay. Um, we can even say 4.5 to be generous, like to say that the Prop 22 is not paying that much. Prop 22 pay on this one is supposed to be $7.34. So they paid you $4.50, and the Prop 22 pay is supposed to be $7.34. That means they owe you $2.84 for that delivery. We're going to stack it up. Now our total difference, including the first delivery, is going to be $4.73. We're going to move on to the next delivery. You do delivery number 3, another small one. $3.50 takes you about 13 minutes. Let's say you go 4 miles. Prop 22 is supposed to pay you $5.88. They underpaid you $2.38. We're now at a total of $7.11. Okay, delivery number 4. Again, $4.75, 5 miles, underpaid by $3. Number 5. Now this one's probably a shop and pay because base pay is $13.75. Took you 51 minutes. You drove 5 miles. We can even just say 4 miles. Shop and pays are usually close by. They underpaid you on this one by $5. So now as you can see, within 5 deliveries, we've already accumulated a deficit of $15 that they are going to owe us at the end of the week. So you go to delivery number 6, another shop and pay, $11.05. Took you 41 minutes. You went 5 miles, and they underpaid you $4.85. Delivery number 7, they underpaid you $3.36. Delivery number 8, they underpaid you $3. Delivery number 9, $4. Okay, so now you see peak pay, and you're like, oh, okay, they're paying us peak pay if I go to this zone. If I get a $3 base pay and peak pay is $2.50, like that's fucking great. I don't even need a tip. They don't even need to tip me because I could do a delivery in 11 minutes, make $5.50. I could do like 5 of those in an hour. I could be a millionaire. So you go and you do a delivery. Okay. So on this one, we're going to add peak pay. So we add $2.50 peak pay. Cool. Now they only owe you $33 at the end of the week. You see, they owed you $35, but because you got $2.50 peak pay, they only owe you 33. Because again, it accumulates over the week. But if you're getting peak pay, that's factored into the base pay. You do another delivery. Oh man, I'm getting peak pay, 250. Okay. You're just all you're doing is you're taking that money away from your adjustment at the end of the week. Get another 250 peak pay. Boom. Still, it doesn't do anything. So the point of this, I wanted to make this visual. I hope this was as clear as I could possibly make it. Because this shit is kind of confusing. If I say, like, oh, if you get peak pay, it's just going to take it away from your adjustment, people don't really understand, like, why is it taking it away from my adjustment? But the adjustment is calculated based on the total amount of active time that you have and the miles, and then they compare that to how much base pay have you already received. So if you're receiving peak pay, they're just going to take that away from your adjustment at the end of the week because you've already received the payment as in the form of peak pay. But the thing is, fucking 99% of your deliveries that you complete on the platform are always underpaid. And 90% of the deliveries that you complete don't have peak pay. So you can imagine if you were to do this for an entire week, right? Let's say we did 70 deliveries. So we'll just extrapolate this all the way down to 70 deliveries. And let's just say the deliveries, because to make this shit simple, we're just gonna we're gonna say that the that you just kind of continued on with the same kind of stuff. Oh, this is not gonna work. Anyways, this would be a pain in the ass to fix this, I think. But um, let's see if I can get this to go all the way down here. This is not gonna work. But if you were to do 70 deliveries by the end of the week, usually I'm getting a $200 adjustment or $180, $150, whatever. Um, Depending on how many deliveries you do and all that. And lately I've been multi-apping a lot more, so my adjustments kind of split between the two. But you're accumulating so much deficit during the week that the peak pay, they're just you're basically just almost, you could say, like it's like a loan on the money. Like you're just getting the money now instead of getting it at the end of the week. But as a driver, like, I think you want to think in terms of like how much am I actually making, not so much like am I getting the money today? I mean, it's cool to like get the money right now, but to me it's a scam. Um Hopefully this video helps somebody doesn't who didn't really that I don't think there's a lot of people that have made videos really explaining how the Prop 22 works. There's some people that already know how it works, but hopefully someone who was, running and chasing peak pay in California, they see this and then they realize that, okay, the only thing that really matters from trip to trip in California is just the tip. Because at the end of the day, every single delivery that you do, the moment you click accept on the delivery, you're on Prop 22 pay. Even though the delivery is going to say, "Oh, we paid you $3 plus a tip, 450 plus a tip." To me, none of that shit matters at all. The only thing that changes one delivery to the next is the tips, because every single trip has the same exact Prop 22 pay as the next trip is going to have. And then you have mileage, but the mileage is 35 cents per mile. That's not enough for you to really do anything. Even if you drove, 150 miles in a day, or fuck that shit up. That's $52 in mileage pay. But if you really know your numbers, and I'm going to make a video on maintenance and depreciation and stuff like that. If you really know your numbers, you know that if you drive 150 miles in a day or in any period of time, that most of this money is going out the door anyways. So to me, the mileage is just a wash. For me, the only thing that matters from one trip to the next trip is going to be the tips because the the Prop 22 pay is the same on every single trip. The mileage is pretty much a wash, and then the tips go on top. So the tips don't take away from your Prop 22 pay in any way. So if you get a trip that's a $0 tip, then you're only getting Prop 22 pay. But if you get a trip that has a tip on there, you're getting the Prop 22 pay and the tip. So that's all I got. Good luck.